about, thanks for pushing recording. So Erin is going to give us a mutual grounding of the preferred suggestion and preferred scenario. First, yes, that's about 15-20 minutes, and then we will open for questions.
Okay, and then my other quick question is, are other board members in attendance? And if so, who are they, please?
Yes, so Erin, why don't you actually let people online know who the board members are that are here? That would be very helpful, and as well as any other additional RTD people, because not everybody can see the list. So, and a reminder for those of you who just joined, I would love for you to rename yourself. So hover over your name, and Claudia or anyone can ask me to do it for you. But you want to hover over your picture. Click the ... and rename yourself. Put your organization after that. One other administrative thing is the chat function is the Q&A function. So my window is not super wide, so my QA function is in the ... and in the ... is a Q&A option, and that's where you would, it's basically like a chat. Any other administrative questions before we go trucking on? Okay, Erin, I'm going to again have you introduce the board members who are on the call and the staff that are on the call, and then let you truck along.
Yeah, thank you. I will get my presentation going as soon as we go through this, but it helps me to see our participants. And so we do have Chair Bouquet that is on the call. We have Director Catlin. And I'm just scrolling through right now. I apologize if I've missed anyone, but that is the two that I see. And then I guess I should introduce myself first. I am Erin Vallejos. I am the Acting Deputy Assistant General Manager of Bus Operations. And then with us from our Paratransit team right now, we do have Paul Hamilton, our Senior Manager of Paratransit. Gretchen Vittergar, who is our Manager of Paratransit. We also have Chelsea Miller. And then other staff, we also have our General Manager and CEO, Deborah Johnson, is with us today, and Jack Kroll from our board office. And I think that is everyone I am seeing from RTD, but again, I apologize if I've missed anyone. I am just scrolling through my participant list.
Great.
So I will, unless I've missed anyone, Jack, that you are seeing that you want to make sure is recognized, I'm going to go ahead and launch the presentation.
Erin, I just would give a shout out to former Director Claudia Folska and former Director Jamie Lewis who joined us. So.
Thank you, Jack. That was excellent recognition. I should have done that as well. So.
No.
All right, is everyone able to see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. So again, I'm Erin Vallejos, so we will go ahead and get started. Today, again, we are here to talk about our Access on Demand program. So we're just going to hit on a couple of objectives, do a quick paratransit overview, kind of provide a little bit of context of just some background, and then get into the program recommendations and discussion. So really, today's objectives are to review the differences between Access-a-Ride and Access on Demand. I think that's probably something a lot of people know about, but just want to hit on some key points there. Again, we're going to provide some context for, where we got along the process to be here today. Inform everyone of our preferred scenario, and then gather feedback. And so our agenda, we've kind of already done the overview already. So we are going to then just do a quick presentation, open it up for some discussion with various members, and then talk about next steps. And my screen does not want to advance. My apologies. Again, so we are going to have about 90 minutes available, and so we do just want to make sure, that everyone kind of waits to be called on, and that we keep everything relevant to this discussion topic. And then just again, be concise so that hopefully, we have a good conversation, but that everyone who, on the panel has an opportunity to speak. All right, so I am going to get into a paratransit overview. And so, as many of you are probably aware, but again, just want to touch on this, we do have two paratransit programs. The first is our Access-a-Ride program, and this is RTD's ADA complimentary paratransit service. This supplements our fixed route service. This does have a fare payment. It is eligible to customers who meet the criteria set forth by the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. It is provided by all RTD branded vehicles, and it must be scheduled at least 1 day in advance. And this is our federally mandated paratransit program that is Access-a-Ride. And then what we're here to talk about a little bit more today is Access on Demand. And this program is RTD's supplemental premium service for paratransit customers. It is subsidized curb to curb taxi and rideshare options. You must be eligible for our Access-a-Ride service to use Access on Demand, so it's available to current paratransit customers. But some of the differences here are that trips do not need to be scheduled in advance, and trips are not shared and are point to point. But something that is important to note is that trips that are requiring a wheelchair accessible vehicle are primarily provided through RTD's Access-a-Ride fleet. Okay, and then just providing a little bit of context as we get into this conversation. Just kind of wanted to give a little background of how we got to where we are today. So RTD, our general manager and CEO, commissioned an APTA paratransit peer review. And while it wasn't only to identify ways to improve access on demand service, that was a key element to that review. And that occurred in February of 2024. So we did go through an entire peer review process, and recommendations from that were presented to the RTD Operations Safety and Security Committee in November of 2024. That was kind of the first time some, kind of recommendation was put together. And then over that time, we did some additional outreach and engaged the community a little bit more and refined those recommendations and came back with some preliminary recommendations on modifications in March of 2025. And then at that time, the general manager and CEO, Deborah Johnson, continued to engage our board members in a dialogue surrounding the recommendations and kind of revisions. And so we even presented some additional revised scenarios in May of 2025. And now here we are today to talk about what we are referring to, because there have been a couple of scenarios, so we need to have a good name. But this is right now, we are proposing the preferred scenario, and this is based on feedback from customers, various interested parties, and some of our board members. So, and again, I did mention between that initial November presentation of the peer review and some recommendations that came out of that, we did do some extensive outreach after that to further discuss proposed access on demand or modifications. And so we did have, as part of that, 5 virtual and 2 in-person public meetings that were conducted with paratransit customers and interested parties. We did do 2 in-person roundtable discussions that were held with leaders of various advocacy organizations. We conducted 2 feedback surveys. Those were directly for our paratransit customers, but then we also had a web page that we developed, and that was made available from December through 2024 through January of 2025. And that was really more open to the public for any interested community member to provide their feedback. We also sent out extensive emails and pre-recorded messages to kind of get the information out there via our interactive voice response phone system. And then we also, as part of this, assessed 21 transit agencies relative to their on-demand programs specific to paratransit, not just general on-demand, but specific to paratransit. And so just to kind of provide a high level of some of the recommendations that we've had along the way, we have kind of had 4 recommendations up until this point. And we have tweaked them, again, based on various feedback that we've heard at each point. So kind of that initial November recommendation, and actually I had to refresh my memory on this because I thought the trip cap at that time was 40 per month, but it was actually 30 in that very initial recommendation. But at that time it was proposed that there be a $4.50 base fare. And I do want to note, very important, that the live option for fares is available in all of these scenarios. At that time too, it was proposed that the subsidy per trip be at $30. And then it was proposed mirroring the current service area and hours of the Access-a-Ride service. So again, we did some extensive outreach and came back with some revised recommendations in March. And the most notable change there was we did increase the trip cap to 40 per month. And then the trip subsidy was reduced to $20 per trip. At that time, as I mentioned, we did engage further with the board and come up with some even further revised scenarios. So in April, we presented 2 new scenarios. I guess they were developed in April, but we discussed them with the board during our May board meeting. And so scenario 1 was to increase that base fare to $6.50 and increase the trip cap to 50 per month. And then the remaining items stayed the same. That was still at a $20 per trip subsidy, mirroring the current ADA service area and boundaries. And then the revised scenario that we looked at that time as well was what we were calling a tiered approach, or scenario 2. So in that one, the fare would change as the number of trips increased. So it was proposed that there be a fare of $4.50 for those first 30 trips. It would go up to $5.50 for trips number 31 through 50. And then it would be $6.50 for trips 51 through 60. And the trip cap would change to $60 per month. And so out of that, we continued to hear some feedback. And so now we've put together, in listening to that feedback, what we are referring to as the preferred scenario that we are here to discuss today. So in this preferred scenario, we have left the trip cap at 60 per month. Again, this is an increase from kind of that 40 that we were proposing back in March. We are proposing the fare at $6.50 per trip. The subsidy is at $20 per trip. And then again, it is proposing to still mirror the current service area and service hours. And this will result in a yearly program cost decrease of about almost $5.6 million, which is about 36.5%. And so some things that went into how we've gotten to this preferred scenario that we think are important to really note here is that we have evaluated a lot of alternatives along the way, and the goal has been to kind of have a similar cost savings. This is around 40%, again, give or take. We're not quite at that, not everything is at a 40% number, but that's about where we were trying to hit a savings target to provide some more financial stability for the program. And then it's important to note that this is a supplemental premium service available to RTD's paratransit customers. So as I noted earlier, there are some differences between Access-a-Ride and Access on Demand. Specifically, with Access on Demand, trips do not need to be scheduled in advance like they do with Access-a-Ride. Trips are not shared, so it is just a trip for that customer. And again, trips are point to point. And so also something to note, obviously, customers can choose how to use their allocated number of trips, that's 60 trip. And again, very important to note that Access-a-Ride is always available to customers. So there could be scenarios where maybe you need to take a trip a day in advance and you decide to use Access-a-Ride, and that leaves you more flexibility with that 60 trip cap. But just because you hit that 60 trip cap doesn't mean you don't have service. You would just need to switch to our Access-a-Ride service. And then something else that I noted before, it is important to note that RTD provides the wheelchair accessible vehicles for most of the trips that require WAVE vehicles. And the reason I note this is there's been some discussion about changing the boundary to the 3/4 of a mile and mirroring service hours. And while there is some cost savings associated with that, that is not the only reason we are making that recommendation. And I think I want to make sure that that's really clear because it is important to note. Is that when we are providing those wheelchair accessible vehicles, that does reduce the availability for our Access-a-Ride service, and that is our federally required paratransit service. And then as demand increases for the need of wheelchair accessible vehicles on Access on Demand, it is leading to longer wait times for those on-demand trips for those customers that need those vehicles. And just to give a little bit of context, as it stands with our last analysis, it is reducing our capacity on Access-a-Ride by about 17%. And this number is slowly going up. So it's very important to note that. And another point that I do want to point out, using the same words there, but in our analysis as well, when we looked at the trips that we were providing in 2024, 95% of those trips would still occur with the proposed modifications we are suggesting for the 3/4 of a mile boundary. And again, I'm not going to go through this in a tremendous detail, but we have really done a lot of analysis and looking at what these items will mean for potential reductions, cost savings. Again, there is going to be some revenue generated from having a fair part of the program. And so, like I said, this brings us to about 36.5%. And so while this is not the largest cost savings in all of the scenarios we analyzed, it is pretty close to that 40% that we were targeting. And so that's kind of what we've had to weigh along as we've gone along this process, is what is the give and take for what we're hearing is the most important to people in the community. And
Great.
so I think I might have been faster than my 15 or 20 minutes, but I want to provide a quick summary, and then we are going to open it up for questions and then, or discussion, sorry, is what I should say. And then we are going to talk about next steps after that. But just want to reiterate, the preferred scenario keeps the 60 trips per month. And I will note that this is more than sufficient for the majority of our customers, who are averaging about 23 trips per month. Again, customers can use their 60 trips on any or all of the 4 service providers any way that they see fit. And again, want to reiterate that Access-a-Ride is available if you know you need a trip in advance, or if you do reach the 60 trip cap limit per month. And then again, we're proposing a subsidy of $20 per trip. And in our analysis, on average, that is most customers are taking trips below that threshold.
Great.
So Jody, I am going to turn it back over to you. I think I'm going to pull this down for now so we can kind of see the group a little bit better.
Okay.
And then when we get to next steps, I will pull it back up unless
Okay.
anyone has any objections.
Well, you could pull it back up too if somebody's referencing something. Maybe that would be
Absolutely.
helpful. Great.
Yeah.
So just a reminder, folks, to keep us focused. I'd like to have as many people share as possible. So that means being concise and focused on your comments. You'll go ahead and raise your hand. Again, if you're online, which is most of you, there's a react icon with a little heart, and in there is a raise your hand. That way I can call on people, and so everybody on the call, whether they can see it or the participants or not, will know who's talking. So Mary Hennick, let's start with you. Go ahead and unmute, Mary.
Sorry, it's hard to get to on my tablet.
I totally get
hello,
it.
my name is Mary Hennick. I'm with Parent to Parent of Colorado. We represent over 3,000 parents across the state of Colorado, but mostly within the metro area. Parents of people with disabilities. We're an advocacy organization who provides support and resources. My comments, I've been following the proposals over the past year, and my comments are the following. The proposals to decrease the cost of the Access on Demand programs are coming at the expense of our riders, of our most vulnerable population. It hasn't been established that there is a need to make cuts to this program. it hasn't been determined that these cuts can't come from other sources. Most notably, the current proposal of a $6.50 trip fee plus reducing the trip cap from $25 to $5 per trip for a rider, and there are many. And I dispute the fact that most riders are under the $20 cap. We haven't seen the numbers. We need to see the numbers about how many riders this is going to affect. But adding a $6.50 per trip fee for someone who takes this to and from work daily, that's $13 to start. And reducing the $20 fare for somebody who consistently exceeds the $25 subsidy, that's $5 per trip. That's another $10. That's an additional $23 a day for someone who works. And for those who I represent, many of them don't make $23 an hour. That's over an hour pay that you're proposing. So this proposal is completely unacceptable. And we really need to see the numbers to know how many people this would adversely affect.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Aaron and then Waylon. Aaron.
Sorry, I know there's two Aarons you're referring to me.
Oh, yes, Aaron Daly. You're
Okay,
right.
thank you. Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm not going to steal anyone's time. So my name is Erin Daly. I'm representing the National Federation of the Blind of Colorado. We're the largest blind advocacy organization in the state and the country. We are definitely happy to see that we're increasing those rides back up to 60. That is good. We definitely didn't want to see a reduction. I do have a quick question, which is I did see the note on the boundary. Are we reducing the times as well to the time that the Access-a-Ride current program is, or are we just reducing that boundary to the 3/4 of a mile?
Aaron, would you like to, the other Aaron?
The other Aaron.
Would you like to answer that?
Absolutely. And
That's a
I
good
do
name.
just want to take a quick moment to note we did have directors Whitmore and Nicholson join us, so I want to recognize that they are here as well. But excellent question. We are proposing reducing the boundary and the hours. And again, the hours, there has been some question that's come up about cost savings. And again, that really has to do with resource availability. It would reduce the hours overall by approximately about 3 to 4 hours during a time of day that a lot of people are not using the service. But again, that is taking away from some of those other resources that can be used later in the day for our wheelchair accessible vehicles, because that is a component that has to be provided as that at that time as well. But it would be both of those items. And again, I believe about 99% of the trips would still be able to happen with that hour change. And like I said, 95% of the trips would still be able to occur with that boundary change.
And it is my understanding that at this time it is not possible to automatically do that. Is that correct? That there would have to be additional people hired in order to monitor this?
Nope, that is not correct for this scenario. That is something I won't get into the technicalities, but that is something that is put into our platforms for the services, and so there would not be a burden on the customers to have to know that information. It would be part of when you went to book your trip that you would see if the voucher was eligible or that it was not, but it would not be your responsibility to keep track of that piece.
So if there did happen to be a ride that did go through, there's not someone that's going to be reviewing and punishing the rider on the back end if that is something that did go through on the app.
Again, this is going to be app controlled. No. There was a scenario that we put forth that was going to require some additional staff, and that was the tiered approach. And so just want to note that that was something that was out there, but that is not involved with what we're recommending in this preferred scenario.
Okay, and then just to be brief on my end,
Aaron, I'm gonna move you right along. So make it quick.
Yeah, I will make it very quick. We conducted some internal discussions with our members, and they definitely would not like to see that reduction in the time or the boundary, being applied to that 3/4 of a mile. There are some people that have chosen their jobs and moved based on this program, and it would create a lot of hardship for them in that. In addition, we are definitely looking to see if we can implement that multi-stop that had been previously removed. A lot of our members take their children to daycare and then go to work, which was is resulting in them not being able to either take their children to this program and, negatively influencing how they can get to work with the various demands of work hours, not necessarily being stable enough to have a 1 day in advance accessoride schedule.
Great. Thank you, Waylon. And then hopefully people are going to keep it to a question with a follow-up, hopefully in the future. So Waylon and then Angel.
Yeah, I just have two questions. The first is I'm sorry I may have missed, what is the live or the live discount?
Absolutely. And I may ask Gretchen to jump in and help me with this question because I'm going to get the percentage wrong. But that is a discount program that is eligible to customers who qualify. And so instead of the fare being $6.50, it would be, it is a 50% of that fare. And in terms of qualifying, you do have to go through, Gretchen, I'm going to.
Sure, yes.
Thank you.
No problem. To be eligible for the live discount, you need to meet the criteria of 250% of the federal poverty level, and you apply through the state website, the PEAK website, for that transportation benefit.
Great.
Okay.
Second question.
Has there any thought to how, so I'm the parent of an individual with a disability who receives services through the developmental disabilities waiver, and she can receive like accessoride tickets through her waiver program. Is there any thought to that amount being reimbursed for the access on demand in some way through the waiver program at all?
That is not something that we are looking at today. That would be specific to our accessoride program still.
Thank you.
Great. Angel, and then Carolyn Hawes, I believe you're the board member. Angel.
Good afternoon. I'm Angel Bond. I'm with Boulder County's Mobility for All program. And first, I just want to thank you all for trying this pilot and then also for having such an extensive engagement process for pulling back the process or pulling back the program. Mobility for All, we've done a couple of pilots with Lyft and Uber. And one thing that we noticed when we did the split distribution at a few housing authority sites that are in transit deserts are when we required that upfront cost, like trips actually decreased a lot more than what we expected because of some of the people being unbanked or underbanked. So my comment also is similar to Wayla's, that a lot of people who depend on Accessoride get passes through their waiver programs. And so I do think that increase of having $6.50 or, the discounted live price is really going to have even more of an impact on the usage of the program. So I think it's actually probably going to be more than the 36%. I do want to reiterate that the multi-stop function was really beneficial for both the people we serve in Boulder County, and then also I have staff who use Access on Demand and Accessoride. And it's just been very liberating to be able to, if a meeting goes longer, be able to rely on Accessoride as, other people have options when they're other people have options to use like the next fixed route bus or something like that. So Accessoride in particular, like the rigid timing, I think that this has been able to provide some people with a little bit more freedom and independence, but we understand that it's above and beyond what's required of the ADA. Have you all thought about maybe decreasing the cost up front or maybe reducing the overall subsidy so that people who are unbanked or underbanked could actually use the program?
Aaron.
Oh, I will. Oh, sorry.
No, Aaron, you.
Jumping
Aaron.
in.
Jump away.
So I will note that there are payment methods required in any of the apps with your account. So not that you necessarily will be charged, right? That is to cover if you do go over that subsidy. And again, we have weighed a lot of different scenarios. As I discussed earlier, we had been looking at some scenarios where that initial fare had been proposed to be a little bit lower. but in return, that trip cap was also a little bit lower. And so we have been trying to take what we've heard and come back with this preferred scenario. So we've definitely looked at all of those options. And again, this is based on kind of some of those goals that we were trying to target. This is where we've come back with based on that feedback that we've heard.
Great. Carolyn Haas on the phone.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'm kind of representing the blind hard of hearing community, and I work as a contract worker for Denver division, Colorado division for deaf, hard of hearing, deaf, blind. So you're stating two possible scenarios here, one of them being your quote preferred and the other being the tier system. The tier system seems to lend itself more to the different groups of people using the app. So somebody who's maybe working would use like 60 trips, and somebody who's, say, retired and just goes somewhere a couple times a week might use 20 trips. How are you going to differentiate between those two in terms of what's actually passed?
So, excellent question. And just to clarify, that was one of the previous scenarios that we had brought forward. That is not the scenario that we're recommending. The scenario that we are proposing right now is the preferred scenario. The feedback that we received about the tier program was a variety of things, but the biggest one was that it would be burdensome to the customers because there would be some responsibility on the customer to keep track of where they were at in the number of trips that they used per month. And so again, based on feedback that we've received, that was a previous recommendation. It is not something we are recommending moving forward with at this time. The preferred scenario is the scenario that we are recommending to move forward.
Okay.
Oh, thank you for the information. I actually would have preferred that, but thanks very much.
Chris Nicholson and Imra? Chris.
Yes, thank you. I had a question about the boundaries for under the new plan. As I understand it, under the preferred option, only our regular routes would qualify for AOD service. So it'd be anything within 3/4 of a mile of regular routes. There are some districts like mine, Central Denver, that are covered in regular routes. And so the overwhelming majority of the people who live in Central Denver qualify for AOD service. There are other areas like, unincorporated Jeffco, which have almost no regular routes. And so nearly none of the citizens of unincorporated Jeffco would qualify for AOD service, even if they needed it, despite the fact that they live within close proximity, for many of them, to commuter routes, bus routes that they take every day, that many people take every day. My question is basically, how is that fair? Why are we qualifying some bus routes as worthy and other routes as not? Help me understand that.
Yes, so the way that routes, the 3/4 of a mile boundary is determined is through federal guidance that is provided, and that's where that 3/4 of a mile boundary comes from. That is within the guidelines. And there is a process by which routes go through for evaluation to determine what does meet those criteria of core services, versus what might fall into that commuter route. And so we follow that guideline as we are making our determination. And again, as I noted, this is kind of a balancing act. There is an aspect of cost savings, but there is also the importance of preserving our federally mandated accessorized services. And when we do go outside of the boundary, it does pull resources away from that. And as the program increases in popularity, we are seeing that percentage of vehicles that need to be pulled away increasing.
Great. Chris, did you have a follow-up, and then we'll truck on?
I do, thank you. So I understand what you're saying there, but as you pointed out earlier, this is a premium service. This is something where we have the ability to set whatever parameters we want for this service in terms of, I mean, right now it's offered to anyone within the service area. And basically what we're talking about here in practical terms is that almost everybody in my district in central Denver will keep their AOD service. If you live in central Denver, the odds are you live within 3/4 of a mile. If you live in, Peggy's district or Troy's district, you are going to lose your service. Almost everybody will. And so when you talk about fairness and cost balancing and cost saving, it strikes me as significantly unfair to do all of that cost saving on the backs of one or two parts of the RTD service area. And it strikes me as the kind of thing that will engender significant ill will from the people who live there for no particularly good reason. I think people in my district would be more than willing to accept cuts, to accept changes, if it means that people in Peggy's district, in Troy's district, in Julian's district, people who have paid taxes for many, many years into RTD don't see AOD basically disappear, functionally disappear. So I would ask in the most stringent, strongest possible terms for us to consider that just because the guidelines require it for the accessoride service, it does not mean that we have to make the same determination for AOD, and it would be a major mistake if we did. Thank you.
Great. Irma, and then Jamie, and then Deborah.
Hi. Yeah, my name is Imran. I do have a couple of questions and comments. I mean, since the access on demand is reliant on technology that RTD doesn't have to manage, why are we putting like arbitrary restrictions, like, for example, restricting time periods, right? So because you don't have to worry about the staff or anything to schedule rides. And then I was also curious, I mean, if it is possible to apply the subsidy first, followed by the fare, if you go or exceed the $20 limit or whatever that you decide to choose. Are those some of the possibilities you've considered?
Aaron.
Because
Yep, sure, Aaron.
Yeah. We have not considered putting the fare second. We do think it's important to add in a little bit of buy-in from our customers that are using the service. And then again, there is still resources that RTD is providing. Yes, we're not providing the technology, but we are providing those wheelchair accessible vehicles and operators. And that is the piece that we're trying to balance, because it is very important that those are maintained for Access-a-Ride, which is our federally mandated service.
okay.
Great.
So
Did you have a
yeah.
Did you have a quick follow-up?
Yeah, I just have a quick follow-up. I'm trying to figure out where the $6.50 amount coming from. Like, from what I remember, Access-a-Ride is, I think it was like $5, and maybe the fares have changed on that. But yeah, can I get an idea on where that came from?
Aaron.
So again, as I've mentioned, we have looked at a lot of different scenarios. You are correct that the fare is $4.50 on Access-a-Ride, but as noted, this is a premium service and there are some benefits that come with that service. And again, we have been trying to weigh the various pieces of the scenarios that we're bringing forward. And so based on that 60 trip cap with kind of some of those other objectives we're trying to hit, that is where we came to the $6.50 fare suggestion.
Okay. I just a quick comment. So a while back, I got some information, a high-level information, that it costs a lot of money to maintain an Access-a-Ride bus, like including the pay of the driver, the maintenance of the bus. Even if you're transporting like one person, it could easily cost over $50 for like that trip. So in a way, this is actually saving RTD a lot of money already. With the $20 cap, even, or whatever that the changes you're proposing. So if people revert back to like using Access-a-Ride, you would have to maintain the customer service center, receive calls, things like that. On top of it, it's not as efficient. So like, doesn't that kind of going backwards? Like, we need to like embrace technology and embrace it instead of trying to put arbitrary restrictions and not accept the cost savings that are already coming from this
So I want
program.
to note that there, a lot of the information that's being out there is talking about the subsidy that's being directly paid to Uber or Lyft or Metro Taxi or Z-Trip. There are hidden costs that are involved with this program that again are not in that subsidy that everyone keeps being referenced. And so, this is not as quite the cost savings that maybe it appears based on the subsidy that we are paying again to those for access on demand providers. And I do want to give, though, Deborah a chance to speak first, to speak next, as I did see her hands up. And I'm not sure if she will be able to stay with us for the full meeting. So wanted to give her an opportunity to address the group.
Great. Deborah.
Thank you very kindly. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Deborah Johnson. I serve as the General Manager and Chief Executive Officer, and I just wanted to provide some context and commend Ms. Vallejos for her presentation. Recognizing that this is a very important program, I just wanted to ensure that I put forward that we are open to suggestions. We have been in this process for quite a while, as you know, with the thorough public engagement, and this is a process by which we have embraced because we want to ensure that we're being empathetic to our customer pain points and try to arrive at a solution that is the most beneficial to the diverse customer segment in which we are serving. More specifically, my hand went up when Director Nicholson put forward a question to Ms. Vallejos relative to why might we be doing the program in a manner in which we are, and she referenced the federal government guidance. That is inherent to the Federal Transit Administration. The Access-a-Ride program is the paratransit complimentary service that we are provided being recipients of federal dollars. That does not mean that we can't do something else with a premium service. Hence, that is what Access on Demand is. So to Secretary Nicholson, who raised that question, I would say it would be up to the board if in fact there is something else that one wants to do, that the board collectively would decide the direction in which to have a supplemental program. So I wanted to ensure that I put forward as the responsible fiduciary as relates to this program and one that signs the certificates and assurances from the federal government, that I put that forward to balance everybody relative to where we are and what Ms. Vallejos was communicating. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share that information.
Great. Jamie and then Peggy.
Thank you. I want to thank all the board members who showed up tonight and all of you that are participating. The peer review that came out in 2024 suggested we take a new look on how we deliver paratransit service. This was in conjunction with the report kind of focusing on access on demand. My first question is, will the board of directors consider doing a comprehensive assessment of the entire system to ensure that Access-a-Ride and Access on Demand complement each other? Right now, we seem to be pitting the two programs against each other, and I think it would be much healthier to look at it holistically. So this is a question for one of the board members.
Aaron, did you want to weigh in first on what that means? And then a board member might choose to raise their hand.
And so I do want to be clear, it is not staff's intent to be pitting them against each other, but we do have to currently balance between the two programs with the resources that they both require. And then, I will let
Julian, would you like to, as a board member, I believe you're a board member, weigh in?
Sure. As the board chair, I would,
I'll
give some comments potentially. I think it's something to potentially explore, Jamie, and have that conversation with. I would have to look into for the proper committee to look into it, and that's something that maybe they could add into their work plan. I don't want to put the cart before the horse with that, so maybe it's a conversation that I have with the committee chair for OSS and maybe look for if that is something to add to the work plan for 2025. But I did just note that down so I can get that communication offline and then explore if that's a possibility for that specific committee. So I appreciate you bringing it up.
Thank you.
And sorry, really quickly, Jamie, I do just want to note that as part of the peer review, there have been some other suggestions that we are looking into implementing. They are just maybe a little bit longer term. So again, we are taking that peer review because, as I said earlier in the presentation, access on demand was just one component, while an important component. So we are looking at some of those larger holistic changes that might make sense for both programs. But again, since some of those are a little bit longer term, unfortunately, we do, some of it's going to be in steps. It's not perfect to just be able to do everything at once, but we are looking at a lot of those recommendations and how we can incorporate those in the future. So that is 100% on staff's radar. We are looking again at how we can launch a lot of those other recommendations, but as I mentioned, some of them are just going to take more time than others. So we have to be cognizant of that and making sure we're not delaying some things when we do need to move other things forward.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks. Jamie, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, real quick follow-ups. I noticed we keep referencing the target was 40%, and I'm just curious, were you given that goal by the board of directors, or was that a staff decision?
You know, former Director Lewis, as I have just stepped into this role about 2 months ago, I will have to get back to you on that one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
If I may.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. So holistically, when
and
we
you
were
are?
I am Deborah Johnson. I'm the General
that's
Manager,
right.
Chief
Sorry.
Executive Officer at the Regional Transportation District.
I just didn't see your name pop up and I didn't see who was talking. So thanks, Deborah. Go.
You're welcome. So in light of what Ms. Vallejos was addressing, when we were looking at cost projections relative to this program, Mr. Lewis, the whole notion was trying to ensure that we were maintaining the integrity of the program from a financial vantage point. And through the course of the peer review and the additional assessments that were done with 21 other transit agencies that had similar or comparable paratransit programs utilizing on-demand services, we were trying to ensure that we can continue the program without sacrificing various aspects of it due to the large growth rate relative to the financial commitment. And that's how the 40% was derived. Thank you.
Great. Caitlin, and then I just want to see if any new additional folks want to jump in before I go for some repeats. So Peggy.
Thank you. I wasn't going to speak because I just got out of 2 hours in the dental chair, so forgive me. I really appreciate Director Nicholson bringing up some of the concerns that I had. And I appreciate Ms. Johnson clarifying that the board could ultimately make that decision. It seems to me that this would need to be taken up by both the OSS committee and finance because it has budgetary implications. But my district, there have been several people who have applied for eligibility and were denied, even though they are within a stone's throw, not even 3/4 of a mile, but a stone's throw from a transit stop, but it happens to be on a regional route. And in my area, the local routes have been dropped over the since I've been on the board over the last 7 years, really leaving the majority of transit, which is pretty sparse anyway in this region, commuter routes. And so one example that you all may have seen on Channel 9 with Steve on your side was a woman who clearly would have been eligible had she been along a local route, was along the 116X, and she was denied eligibility for that reason. And we've got an aging population in Conifer and Evergreen and in South Jeffco, and they're not served by any local routes. It's all commuter routes. So I really would like, as Director Nicholson suggested, and that we and Chair Bouquet, that we take a look at this from those aspects, because I do believe that this is an opportunity to provide some equity to those underserved areas. Thank you for my opportunity to opine. I really didn't have a question, but I do think that this is something that the board should take up. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Peggy. So before I turn to Angel and Mary, who've already spoke, any new folks want to weigh in before we go for round two?
Can somebody hear me here?
Yes, Shamsi.
Oh, I don't know how to do this very well. I guess I'm visually impaired. I
That's
just have a
okay.
quick question. My name is Judith. I'm a customer. And are you planning to retain the ability to call in and request the on-demand ride? Or are you assuming everyone has a smartphone? Because I keep hearing all of this stuff about apps, and I don't have an app.
Aaron.
So really quickly, I do want to circle back on Director Catlin. I just want to make sure because words do matter. And so no one is denied eligibility based on their address. You can become eligible to use Access-a-Ride and Access on Demand, even if you do live outside of that 3/4 of a mile boundary. I do understand the point that you are making is that it will not pick you up at your house. But again, that eligibility piece is important to make that distinction because we do have customers who may become eligible to use the service, and they work with our team to maybe coordinate a location very close to, and again, this doesn't work for everyone, but you know, they may work to coordinate a location for pickup that is within the Access-a-Ride boundary. So again, that eligibility piece, just the language around that does matter.
Oh, that wasn't the question that I had.
Yes, I wanted to circle back though before we got too far away from Director Catlin's comments that was important.
Thank you, Aaron. We can take that offline, but I do believe that some of these requests have not, I think maybe there have been some misunderstandings.
Happy to talk to you offline about that further. I do think that's important, but again, I just want to put that out there that you can be eligible and not live within that 3/4 of a mile if you're in the district. And then, sorry to go back to the, again, happy to talk to you with you a little bit more offline about that. And then to answer the most recent question that was answered, again, I just didn't want to get too far away. We are not proposing any changes, so we plan to keep that.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Judith, will you tell me your name? Because you show up
I
as
didn't know
somebody
how to
else.
put it up here.
That's okay.
Oh, here it is. I see it now. It just showed up. Okay. It's Judith Marienthal. Yeah.
Great. Okay.
And I love the program. I mean, yeah, it's been great for me.
Great. Brandy, did you want to jump in with an admin?
I just wanted to ask a couple of questions that are in the Q&A.
Great.
What is the live discount and does it reduce trip costs? That was from an anonymous participant.
Yeah, so as we discussed earlier, the live discount does bring down that initial fare payment from $6.50 to $3.25. You do have to qualify or be eligible for that discount. And we're happy to provide any additional information for that if anyone would like to reach out if that applies to you specifically, but that would reduce that upfront fare payment for those customers that were eligible or qualified. I'm not sure what term is better for that one, since we just said language matters with eligibility.
Great. Brandy, what's the other Q&A
The other question is from Angel Bond. Have you looked at scenarios that allow multiple stop trips? This is very important to people who drop their kids off at school or need to make short trips to the post office or pharmacy.
Aaron, I think you already answered this question though, but Aaron.
Yeah, so no, again, those would still count as individual trips towards your 60 trip cap. So no, that is not something that we are looking at because we're trying to keep that trip cap the same for all customers.
Great.
All right, those are all the questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Brandy. Angel, you've now had this will be your third round. So Angel, very quickly.
I just wanted to follow up on Aaron's response to the credit cards. I didn't know how in depth to get, but it really is impactful because people who are underbanked or unbanked, they might have like $50 in their debit account. And when the current scenario, they just make sure that the trips don't ever like go over the amount that you're subsidizing. But what we saw doing multiple pilots is that by the end of the month, when people are using their debit card, they don't have money in their checking account to be able to meet the minimum. So Lyft requires a minimum of $50 to be in any credit card or any debit card to be able to use the service. So people maybe got like 1 or 2 trips at the beginning of the month when they had money in their account. But that upfront split distribution really does have a huge impact on who can use the service because of people being unbanked or underbanked. And I think disproportionately people who are on Medicaid or older adults who use the service are going to be unbanked or underbanked. So I just wanted to reiterate that I understand that the current situation, people still have to have credit cards, but they either do prepaid credit cards or else they're using their debit card. And when you put that upfront cost, it impacts both of those scenarios.
Great. Mary Hennick.
Yes, I'm going to circle back to my first comment and request that actual numbers be provided to the board so that they can make sound decisions. Numbers that represent how many users and the cost increase to those users that would be incurred based on these proposed changes. And secondly, addressing both Jamie's comment and Imran referencing the 2 different programs, Accessoride, Access on Demand. There is a good reason for both of those programs to exist. There are different riders who benefit from each of those programs. Regardless, the numbers that I've seen lately regarding the cost per ride of Accessoride is $100 per trip. That was put forward by a former RTD director, whereas the cost for an Access on Demand ride cost to RTD is $22 per trip. This is a very significant difference. And it does, I think in order for the board to make a decision on these program changes, they need to take into account the different programs and the usages of the programs and where the more cost-effective options are to meet the needs of our paratransit customers. So can numbers be provided? Will numbers be provided? Can you commit to that? Thank you.
Erin, you have numbers? Have they been? Sorry.
Sorry. I'm an animal person. We have been providing some statistics, but I will look at what additional information might be available based on some of these questions and see what we can have ready when we bring this to the OSS committee.
Great. Chris, you get lots of chances since you're on board, but go, Chris.
You did it is one privilege that I will happily take. So I just wanted to say, I really appreciate, Erin, the work that your team does to try to facilitate folks getting access to Accessoride and, when they are not within the federally mandated boundaries. It is kind of a Kafkaesque situation where, you try to figure out like where on the map can we have you wheelchair over to so that you can get picked up so that you can qualify for the thing. And what I would say is, I think it will be a rewarding upgrade to not have to put you through having to solve that problem for Accessoride and for AOD. But I wanted to recognize the work that your team has gone through to try to bridge that gap given the federal guidelines.
Great. Any other additional comments at this time from stakeholders?
I just had one more question. Judith, the customer. I keep hearing things and then I would never have thought about them, but can we still use cash instead of I don't use a credit card. Can we still pay the Metro driver in cash?
And the Accessoride driver or the Access on Demand driver?
Access on Demand, the Metro cab, yeah.
And I'm going to phone a friend on this one and ask Gretchen if she's able to answer that question.
Sure, yes. Currently, yes, you can use cash on the cab services.
All right, thank
So
you.
Metro, Taxi, and Z Trip, but that would not be an option for Lyft or Uber, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Right, yeah, well, I can't use Lyft or Uber because I don't have a smart card, a smartphone. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Great. Any other, Imran and then Colleen? Actually, Colleen, I'm going to have little Colleen jump in first since she hasn't spoke yet. And then Imran, I will have you jump in. So Colleen.
I'll be quick, and it's more of a comment than a question. I've been kind of just soaking it all in and listening to everyone's comments, but I am representing the clients from the Denver Regional Mobility and Access Council, and we primarily serve older adults and people with disabilities. I do applaud RTD's efforts to make this work for everyone, but I do want to throw out there that a fare of $6.50 for the clients we serve, it's just not realistic. I wouldn't even know how they would manage that on some of their fixed incomes and budgets, right? And then I wanted to add that primarily the folks we serve that use this service, both the access on demand and the accessible ride, it's for medical appointments. And you're getting into an area of life or death. So I just wanted to say that I hope the board takes that into consideration. I know the goal is to save money, and I get that. I understand that. But sometimes these are the only this is the only way that folks can get to the medical care that they need. And if they can't afford it, then it's kind of pointless. So that's all I wanted to say. I, I know that the solution, but I just would plead with the board and the decision makers to consider those populations, the older adults, the people with disabilities that are already facing so many barriers when the decisions are made. Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen. Imran.
So I'm just wondering if the $6.50 fare is already decided and set in stone, or there is flexibility and no final decision has been made on that. Because I was just calculating the amount, like if people like me who use 60 rides a month, like that equates to around like $4,800 a year. And then if you have more than one person in the household, that goes up to like almost $10,000. That's a significant amount. No matter how much money you make, I mean, that will put a significant dent to people's budgets and family budgets. So just wondering like if that $6.50 is, and on top of it, you also have reduced it from $25 to $20, the subsidy. So it's like a, cut on both sides basically in some ways. Because if you look at the cost of Uber or Lyft, for example, that's been actually exponentially going up almost like every few months due to inflation or whatever reason they give. So it's like taking a significant step backwards, I feel.
Has the decision been made? Aaron.
So as our general manager and CEO said, this is ultimately a decision of the committee and the board. This is actually a great segue. I am going to jump into this with this question because I think this is a great segue to our next steps. And then, we can.
Great.
Oh, if I can get to my presentation, my apologies. After I put it down, it doesn't want to be in presentation mode. Sorry, bear with me for one moment.
Sure. We need the Jeopardy music.
I should know better than to stop sharing, I guess, but I thought it would be nicer to be able to see those that are speaking. So again, just want to reiterate that as our general manager and CEO said, this is ultimately going to be a decision that is made by our board of directors. So we're right now at the very end of June, and it is the intent that we will bring forth a recommended action is what we call it to the board. So first it will be presented to our Operations, Safety, and Security Committee. And they will then vote on that item. And if they vote to advance it forward, it will go to our full board of directors. And I believe the dates of those meetings are July 16th for our Operations, Safety, and Security Committee that meets in July. And then it will be July 29th for our full board. So again, if the committee approves it, it will advance forward to our full board for approval. And again, it will ultimately be kind of their final decision on what gets approved. And then something else I did want to clarify and take an opportunity to clarify here, because it was a comment that I've heard. So we do say that implementation will commence in August and then implementation will be complete in October. And I think this might be another scenario where words matter, and we maybe should have worded this a little bit differently. So in August, we will begin a lot of outreach and education, making sure all of our customers are aware. Not everyone is quite as engaged as others. So really working with the customers to get everyone ready for the changes, get that communication out there, get anything new done that we need to do. There might possibly be a little bit of registration and some things like that. So that will be the process that commences between August and September, and no changes would go in effect until October. That would be when, again, if the board approves whatever the fare, let's just say it's $6.50. October 1st would be when customers would be expected to make that contribution. And that would be when that subsidy would change as well. So none of those real changes would happen before October 1st. By implementation commencement, we just kind of mean getting everybody ready.
Great. Brandy, did you have some Q&A questions?
Yes, there is one question from former Director Lewis. Can we help people navigate to the LIVE program when they apply for Access a Ride?
Excellent question. And that is actually something that we are in the process of making a little bit more visible and kind of sharing a little bit more information about as part of the Access a Ride application and eligibility process. So there will be some information available up front. It is something we are looking to have be a topic of discussion during the eligibility assessment. So yes, we are absolutely looking at ways that we can bring about additional education of that program, and are slowly beginning to implement that as well. And that will be a continued piece of that implementation before we get to October.
Thanks.
Great. Chris, did you have a question about next steps?
I do, sort of. My my question is, could we get a copy of the so this meeting is being recorded, but it's not up on YouTube. I checked because I wanted to watch the part that I missed. Could you guys email out a copy of the recording to, or link to the recording to the people who attended the meeting, for example, or a copy of the deck?
Sure. At this point, Chris, the intent was just to have the copy for us to write the meeting summary. And then if we decided in the end, if RTD decided in the end to post the whole recording, we would email people because we have all of your emails. That was mostly was intended to help us write the meeting summary just to make sure. But Aaron, did you have additional thought on that?
And Director Nicholson, we can talk about opportunities there. We do just want to be clear that this is, kind of a summit that we are hosting as staff. And so we didn't want to have it be kind of mixed in with the RTD committee and board of directors meetings. So we'll talk about opportunities there, because I do think, again, the intent is to have information be available. We just need to figure out the best vehicle for that. I guess pun intended on that one.
Imran.
Yeah, just curious if why is the implementation not going into effect like beginning of next year? I mean, October sounds like a bit odd. Maybe gives more people more time to take in the changes. Like, if that's going to be implemented, whatever changes are being proposed.
Again, as something that's mentioned earlier, part of these changes is to make the program a little bit more financially sustainable. And that is where that decision came from with that timeline, because we are continuing to see, substantial increase in the program. And we are also continuing to see increase in our Access-a-Ride usage. And so we are trying to, like I said, balance all of these things when we're making our recommendations. And that's why we are recommending October for that implementation.
Great. Peggy Catlin. Question?
Not a question. I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for facilitating this summit. I think it really provides a forum for people to provide input, and we've gotten a lot of input through the board, but I think this was a really well done forum. And Aaron, I thank you for all your work, and I know you're trying to juggle a lot of things, but I just think this was very helpful, and I'm glad I was able to log in. So thank you very, very much.
Brandy, did we have a question in the Q&A?
We have two questions. One question, well, it's not a question, it's rather a request rather than a question from anonymous participant. I see that 17 of the 34 participants here have RTD after their name. One might think you're preaching to the choir. Please try harder to reach the public, especially users of Access-a-Ride or Access on Demand users, or their caregivers when you want input on these programs. Thank you.
Great.
And then from Mary H. Henneke, I believe. Budget for and was approved through end of year, and we were told no changes would end made before then. So if I misquoted that, Mary, it sounds like you were thinking that the changes would happen at the end of the year, if I'm paraphrasing correctly.
So we did approve some additional budget, but at the time that that budget was determined, we had anticipated program modifications happening a little bit sooner. Again, we have taken a little bit more of an opportunity to further enhance the discussion, and that's part of why we're here today. That's part of why we did have a dialogue with the board back in May. But at the time that we approved an increased budget, it was based on the understanding that there would be modifications made before the end of the year. So just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. Great. Gary, I'm going to let you jump in because we haven't heard from you. And then Judith. Gary, question about next steps? Gary, you want to unmute, or would you like us to unmute? So Gary, you got to unmute. So at your window, at the bottom left of your Zoom window, there's an audio button.
I can also prompt him to unmute.
Oh, sure. Yes, thank you, Brandy. Prompt him to unmute.
Hopefully he can
there we go.
find that.
Thank you,
Thank
Gary.
you. Okay. As obviously, I don't know how to do this. I'm not familiar with all your acronyms and this and that. I use the Lyft and Uber services extensively, 20 to 30, 35 rides a month. And I guess you're stopping the different stops. Like for instance, the other day I went to UPS, the bank, and grocery store and picked up the groceries they had for me and came back to my house. It didn't cost anything. Now with your proposal, it's going to cost me what, $24 to $30 for the same trip. Is that correct? With all the $6.50 fees?
Aaron?
Yes, there would be a $6.50 fee for each of those legs of your trip, for each trip, essentially. Those would be considered separate trips.
How do you people figure this is reasonable? I don't understand. It doesn't cost anybody any more money, to stop, unless the person abuses that and stays somewhere. But if they stop to pick, it doesn't cost any more Uber. I just don't understand why you people think this is a good thing. And I don't think you're hearing these other people that say the $6.50 fee cost for these people that have no money is not reasonable. You're not hearing this. I can hear it in your voices here. These people are saying, hey, please don't charge this, and you're not hearing them. So please hear them.
Thanks, Gary. Let's try
Okay.
to, yep, that's
Yeah,
great.
and I live in Heather Gardens, and there are a lot of people here can't afford $6 or even $3 per trip. So please hear that. Okay.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
Judith.
Yeah, I just have one more operational question. Are we going to have to re-sign up for this program when you implement these new changes, or will we just, everything stay the same except we'll be paying more money? We'll be paying money. Is that correct?
There will be a period of needing to re-sign up, which again is part of why we're talking about that implementation, but the team will be available. Our goal is to work with everyone and have a lot of outreach during that time period to assist with anything that does need to happen. So there is going to be a little bit of that does need to happen, but again, that's why we do have this being delayed a little bit from when the board approves it to when full implementation happens. And like I said, there's going to be a lot of extensive outreach, and a lot of the team, well, all of the team really, we're all here to make this as smooth as possible. So we will be assisting with that transition.
Is that going to entail a face-to-face visit again? Will
No,
you
that is not going
reapply
to be
and you
the
have to get,
same. That's not going
pardon?
to be the same as establishing eligibility. So no, that will not be a piece of this, of this transition. If you are eligible, you are still eligible. So that will not be necessary.
So your wallet card that you have with all the phone numbers are the same? Are going to be that you call when you want to ride?
Oh, yes. Yep. None of that will change. There's just going to be a new enrollment form to fill out. And again, our staff is going to be here and the team to help facilitate that.
So you'll be mailing those out in the mail?
Yes. Again, once the board gives us the final direction of what we're going to be doing, we will be engaging with all of our customers.
Okay, yeah, because I'm not going to be pulling it off the web. So I'm visually impaired, so this is challenging.
No, that's why we have that period. So again, we are going to be actively engaging to try to make this as smooth as possible.
Okay, and then I just wanted to, mention I am a senior citizen. I'm on a fixed income. I'm not on public assistance, but yes, $6 each way, $12 a trip is significant. So I just wanted to mention that, as well as some of the other people had mentioned that, and I'm sure it's a lot more difficult for other people that use it on a regular basis. So thank you.
Thanks, Judith. All right, I'm going to give my thanks, and then Erin, I will let you send us out. So thank you as the facilitator. Thank you for letting me keep you pushing forward and keep you focused, and even letting me skip you to get new folks. I appreciate that. So thank you all. Erin.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for attending. We do really appreciate your engagement as we work through all of this. Definitely appreciate your time, because I know, everyone's time is valuable. And so we appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. I did also want to share, because there was a comment about, the small group here. I do think the number of RTD people we have on the call shows our dedication to really making everything with our paratransit successful. We all, really feel passionately about this, or I don't think we would work in the departments that we do. But there is another opportunity for public comment on Monday, this upcoming Monday, June 30th. It's going to be, I believe, kind of a similar format, maybe slightly different, but that is going to be at 3:30. So if anyone feels that they missed out on an opportunity to come to this meeting, there is that meeting. And then I also encourage everyone, if again, they can't come to that meeting, there's always the opportunity to email us or, call our customer care department as well and share your feedback there. But you can also provide public comment at our committee meeting, which is July 16th at 5:30, and at our board meeting, which is July 29th, also at 5:30. And I see Deborah and Chair Bouquet both have their hands raised, so I would like to give them an opportunity to close it out as well.
Thank you very kindly, Ms. Vallejos. And first and foremost, I want to thank everyone for engaging. I want to acknowledge Jamie Lewis with the Colorado Cross Disability Coalition, and also Director Rusha of the RTD board, who is not here. Having had the opportunity to engage with both of them, and Director Lewis, former Director Lewis, had this suggestion about a forum. When we first spoke, I immediately said we embrace this and wanted to move forward. So I'd be remiss not to acknowledge his engagement on this front and being a good partner, as he and I, as well as Ms. Riskin, have the opportunity to engage on a monthly basis on a myriad of topics, and it's quite important to me. And I would like to acknowledge Ms. Vallejos, Ms. Vittiger, and Mr. Hamilton, and others within the RTD Paratransit program offices for their due diligence, their work, their compassion. And I say compassion because I want you all to know that we hear you. We're trying to leverage firm compassion and be good fiduciaries as well. So I don't want anybody walking away thinking we don't care. If we did not, we would not have extended the process when we heard from all of you. So thank you very much for making lives better through connections and engaging with us. And I'll yield the floor to Chairman Bouquet.
Thank you very much, CEO GM Johnson. No, just wanted to echo everything that was just stated by Deborah. Erin, excellent job. Thank you for providing all the information that I was able to hear, and all our staff members for providing this needed information. Thank you again, Jamie and Joanne. I know they're kind of the catalyst with this going forward, so really appreciate them taking the time and setting this up. And as mentioned, there is an opportunity for Monday as well to provide feedback, and obviously ongoing as this board makes decisions going forward. I think this is incredibly helpful as a board director. Happy to see other directors on here as well. This kind of gives us feedback to go going forward and help to make decisions. So do greatly appreciate everyone for all their work they put in here. And most importantly, thank you for our speakers who showed up in public. So thank you all.
Thank you all very much. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.